One of the major areas of focus today in the media is education. Many parents are concerned about which educational system is best for their child. For some, they find that the public school environment is the best for their child, while others find the private school environment to be more suitable. Here we will discuss the similarities and differences between both public and private schools, and also get to know some students and administrators from both schools. In the end, all that really matters is the success of the students for their future and whichever school environment students are most comfortable with. Thomas County Central High School is just one of the many average everyday public schools in America. However, many students here and faculty have had the opportunity to be at both the public and private school environments. Now, we will hear from a few of these students and faculty members and learn some positive and negative sides of both the school environments. From academics to class sizes and even social interaction found in both environments.
Well, you get, I think being at a private school, it's a better learning environment because in most cases it is smaller and it's more one-on-one kind of. Well, when me and Holly were in private school, we were in the same class with the same four people, the same people for 4 years in a row. And sometimes we kind of got sick of the people, but we got over it in the end. So that's one of the negative things. And then sometimes it's you kind of are more sheltered than at a private school than you are a public school. Well, being at a public school, it's free. You don't have to, that's a big benefit from being at a public school. And there's definitely more people, so that's another good thing about it too, being at a public school. It being so big, and that's, I think, yeah, and then it's just more people and not getting that one-on-one thing at a private school. We had more field trips and we had recess up until 8th grade, and I liked that. That was some activities we got to do. And then here we don't have that, but I don't know, I can't think of any activities that are different. We have drama and we have broadcasting. At private schools we didn't have that. Private. Well, again, because I have a hard time learning with a lot of people around, and so being in a smaller environment is better for me. So that's why I like being in private school. I think so. Having already done it, being able to do it again will probably be much easier.
Private school is different because all the classes are smaller. Like, I mean, at my school, our 8th grade class only had 5 students in it. And I guess the biggest class size was only like 18, I think. And that was because that was 3rd and 4th grade combined. So, but public school is bigger. There are obviously a lot more people. Private school, just because like at my school we were always challenged. We had a really difficult curriculum. We were always doing a grade level higher than what we would be doing in public school. Like in 8th grade I was doing pretty much all 9th grade materials and stuff. And they just challenge you. They put you up to a higher standard because they expect more of you. And I guess like when you have to pay for education, you're expected to do better to begin with. Like you're expected to take it more seriously, and they challenge you more. So. I guess so, since like our curriculum was a grade level ahead, but I probably actually wouldn't. I'd probably choose to stay in high school the full 4 years. Well, at a private school, like there aren't that many people, and the odds are you have all your classes with them. So if you don't like somebody, well, too bad. You kind of have to see them all the time. But at public school, like you can kind of avoid certain people if you don't like them, or if you're not friends with them or whatever, you don't have to kind of be friends with them and stuff. So. Well, public school does have a lot more options club-wise. My school didn't have very many clubs. We had clubs 1 year, but it was just like a Saturday thing. But clubs and extracurricular activities, there are definitely a lot more of it at public school. My private school did not have band or drama or anything. Some probably do, but not the smaller ones. We did have choir or chorus and speech, like for public speaking and stuff, and art, but that was all. So like we didn't have the option to be in drama or broadcasting or anything like that. So. Well, we did have a baseball team, but it takes time to develop a baseball team, so we're not very good. They're not very good yet.
I've only been an administrator in a public school. I haven't had an opportunity to experience a private school situation. Well, I'm a product of the public school, and I'm a firm believer of an advocate for public education. Like I said, I graduated from a public school system and was involved in a lot of extracurricular activities, like sports and clubs that public school has to offer. Of course, private schools offer some of the same things, but the public school has just always been a place that I've thoroughly enjoyed. As far as part of my life, experiences, in high school, and then of course, working in the public school system, I've just enjoyed it. Made it my career in education. If they are, they're probably probably really insignificant. I think that a lot of private schools they have a lot of the same issues that public school has. As far as drugs or other type of subversive behaviors. Sometimes even kids that go to private schools because of status or affluency, they can get involved in negative behavior just as kids from say less or medium income average families to lower income. Basically, it's all about choices. It doesn't matter where you come from or what school you go to. So I think the behaviors are somewhat the same in both settings. Probably would. When you really look down to it, the nuts and bolts. School to school is reading, writing, arithmetic. It doesn't matter what school, whether it's public or private. As a student, you're still your responsibility as a student is to learn. So I don't think it would be that big of a transition to go from a public to a private school or a private to a public school. If you're there and you understand that you're there to try to learn something, it doesn't matter where you go, because they basically offer the same things. Well, for me, like I said, I'm an advocate for public school. I'm a product of the public school, so I would most certainly say that a public school would provide you the best opportunities. I know there are a lot of private schools out there, but as far as opportunities, I think you learn a lot more in real world type experiences in a public setting. I can't say because I haven't worked in a private school, but I guess my perception might be, it may be wrong, but I would think that in a private setting, your things are kind of cushioned, or maybe you're not as exposed to maybe a lot more things that you would be in a public school. So I think you can learn a lot from those situations or from those experiences in a public school that you would learn in a private school. And I think that it might even make you a better person all around, because in a public setting you deal with everybody. You deal with everyday common worker, common man, so to speak. So whereas maybe in a private setting, like I say, usually private schools can be a lot more expensive, and parents have to come up with the money for their child to go to a private school. So they might be a little more sheltered when it comes to real life and real world experiences. So I think public education will give you an advantage to deal with real life experiences, so to speak, when you're just dealing with the general public, because you have to deal with everybody, from all aspects of life, from both sides of the track, so to speak. So I would definitely think a public school would be a better overall experience.
Hi, I'm Nancy Rogers, and I'm an English teacher. I've been teaching for 13 years. I taught 6 years at a private school, and I've been at Thomas County Central High School for 7 years in the public school arena. And there are a lot of similarities in the learning environments in private and public schools. I think at both schools you have caring teachers that care about their children. At both types of schools generally you have students that want to learn. The learning environments are usually positive. academics are usually the focus, like I said, usually there. The difference would be, though, I guess, in class size. Class sizes are going to be different. Curriculum is different at a private school versus a public school. At public school, you have standards that are very much in place. Everyone has to meet the same standards, regardless of where the public school is, and then their students are tested on those standards. Whereas at a private school, it is not like that. Most teachers at a private school are free to, in a lot of ways, create their own curriculum. In other words, they know what those students need to have done during that grade level, and they pretty much can teach whatever books, whatever novels they need to, as long as the curriculum director at the private school approves that. So there are lots of differences in terms of the learning plans that are used for the two types of schools. Now, classroom sizes, in my opinion, when we look at the major things that are different between public and private school, class size is definitely number one for me. I know when I was at a private school, my classes, I think the largest class I ever had there was like 26. 26 is my average class size here at a public school, and actually I've had classes up to 32, 33 students. Whereas in at the private school, most of my classes were 18 or less. I would say usually 12 to 15 was about the average. Now, if you're not in education, you may not think that's a big deal, but it is a tremendous big deal, because the fewer students you have, the more individual attention they get. And in my opinion, that makes a much better education when that teacher has that very close relationship and can identify what that student needs and can actually help that student with it. In a public school, unfortunately, sometimes we still recognize what the students need. We still have that relationship with the student. However, it's difficult to be able to get to every child when you have 30 kids in a class. It's very difficult. So sometimes the students don't get everything they need in a public school. That would be the one thing that I would think would be the most negative, I suppose, there. In terms of a student transferring or transitioning from a public to a private, or private to a public school, many times it's difficult. And the major reason is, I guess one aspect of that just depends on how long that student's been there. If the student's been in a private school most of his or her life, the transition to a public school is going to be difficult, simply because that student is probably accustomed to very small classes, teachers that are very, very involved with them, probably know their parents, know everybody in the community, very small, very safe environment. When that student goes to a public school, it's much larger. That in itself is enough for a student to have to get over, is the sheer number of students, the number of teachers that they're going to have to face there. Private schools, as far as a student from a public to a private schools, one of the negative things, they tend to be cliquish. And so if you've been at that private school all of your life, you're great. But if you transfer in there later, particularly in middle or high school, it can be pretty daunting. Some of the kids, they don't like outsiders, they don't want kids to come from a public school, they may have misconceptions about what a public school is. And the same is probably true about public school kids and private school kids. But I think I think the transition is easier the younger the child is, the fewer grades that he or she has been in one of those two types of schools. Because traditionally what I've seen is the kids that come from private schools to public, it's a very difficult transition simply because of that small environment that they're accustomed to, and it's somewhat overwhelming to come to a much larger school like ours. People ask me this all the time about which do I think is better, public or private school. Of course, I'm a public school teacher and I love public school, and my children, if I had children, would go to a public school, but that is a matter of personal preference. But that personal preference is based on the fact that I've been in both environments and I can see the positive and the negative in both. I do feel that a public school offers the better choice of the two, simply because a student is more well-rounded. He or she is given many, many more opportunities for extracurricular activities, sports, clubs, all of these things that a private school just cannot offer. In addition, there are tons of classes here at a public school that a private school just cannot offer. Welding, agriculture, FFA club, things like that you just cannot get at a private school. So in that aspect, I think the public education, and also just having kids be well-rounded. You need to go to school with people of different races and backgrounds and socioeconomic status. They all need to be, kids need to learn how to get along with those types of people, because that's what the world is. That's what college is going to be like, and that's what the real world is like. Now, with that said, there are a few advantages, and I think going to a private school is a matter of that parent's preference. If you have the money to send your child to a private school, that can be a good choice. Like I said earlier, they're going to have a lot of individualized attention. Test scores tend to be very high with kids from private schools. Very focused on academics. Since there are no those extra activities, typically in a private school the focus is more on academics than maybe sometimes in a public school. So I really think there are positives to both. If I were choosing, obviously I would choose the public school arena, but I think in the end it just depends on the parent's choice, and the individual child probably makes a big difference in that decision as well.
Public and private schools have existed in America for over 200 years. Through the years, people have chosen which school system fits them and their needs, from social interaction to academics to extracurricular activity, and just for whatever school system meets their needs. While there are pros and cons to both school systems, in the end, it comes down to what is the best education choice or fit for each individual.